My husband called me useless while I signed his paychecks. He mocked me for staying home while I managed millions he didn't know existed. The day he brought his mistress to our house, I smiled, packed nothing, and left. He didn't realize I was the one holding his entire world together. Before I tell you how I walked away with everything while he lost it all, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to follow this channel because I share real stories about real women who stopped playing small. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. 8 years ago, I met Trevor at a corporate networking event in downtown Atlanta. I was a marketing executive at a tech firm, pulling in 6 figures, wearing my favorite power suit, and honestly, I was thriving. He walked up to me during the mixer with this confident smile, introduced himself as a sales manager, and we just clicked. He was charming, ambitious, and he actually listened when I talked about my work. That was rare. Most men I'd dated felt threatened by my success, but Trevor seemed different. He celebrated it. We got engaged after a year, married 6 months later, and for the first couple of years, it really felt like a partnership. We were both climbing, both hustling, both dreaming big. Then things started shifting. Trevor got promoted to vice president of sales at his company, and suddenly his career exploded. He was traveling, closing major deals, making a name for himself. I was so proud of him. I was right there supporting him, hosting dinners for his clients, making sure he had everything he needed to succeed. When I got pregnant with our son Caleb, we had this conversation about me taking maternity leave. Trevor said, "Why don't you take some time off? I'm making good money now. You deserve to rest." It sounded sweet at the time. It sounded like love. So I took the leave. Caleb was born, and those first few months were beautiful chaos. Trevor kept saying, "Don't rush back. Enjoy this time." Then it became, "Maybe you should wait until he's in preschool." Then I got pregnant again with our daughter Shayla, and by that point, I hadn't worked in almost 3 years. The conversation about me going back to work just stopped happening, and honestly, part of me was okay with it at first. I was raising our children, managing our home, and Trevor's income had tripled. We were comfortable, more than comfortable. But somewhere along the way, Trevor's tone changed. It started with little comments. "Must be nice to sleep in." Except I was up at 6 with 2 kids. "What did you even do today?" When I'd spent 8 hours keeping 2 tiny humans alive, fed, and entertained. Then it escalated. At a company barbecue, someone asked me what I did for work, and before I could answer, Trevor jumped in with, "Oh, she's retired early," and laughed like it was a joke. But the way he said it, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a dismissal. 5 years into being a stay-at-home mom, I was running a tight ship. Caleb was 5, Shayla was 2, and our house operated like clockwork because I made it that way. Meanwhile, Trevor was flying high. His company had made him senior vice president. He was bringing in millions in deals, and his ego grew with every promotion. He started coming home later, barely looked at the kids, and when he did talk to me, it was with this edge of contempt. But the moment that broke something in me happened at a dinner party we hosted for his colleagues. We had about 15 people in our dining room, the table I'd set beautifully, the meal I'd cooked from scratch. Trevor was holding court, telling stories, and one of his co-workers asked me about my background. I was about to mention my marketing career when Trevor cut me off. "My wife?" "Oh, she doesn't work. Honestly, I haven't quite figured out what she does all day." The whole table laughed. They actually laughed, and I just sat there, smiled, and took another sip of wine. But inside, something clicked, something hardened. That night, after everyone left and Trevor passed out in bed, I sat in our home office and started thinking, really thinking. See, what Trevor didn't know, what he'd never bothered to ask about, was that I wasn't some helpless housewife living off his income. Before we got married, my grandmother passed and left me $50,000. Instead of spending it, I invested it. Aggressively. I studied. I researched. I took risks. And over the years, I'd turned that $50,000 into just over $400,000. Everything was in accounts I'd opened before marriage, accounts with my maiden name, accounts Trevor never asked about because he assumed I had nothing. But that wasn't even the best part. I'd also been doing freelance marketing consulting on the side for the past 3 years. Small projects, remote work, nothing that interfered with the kids, but enough to keep my skills sharp and my own money flowing. I had my own LLC, my own business, my own income. And here's the kicker. I managed all of Trevor's finances too. He was too busy being important to handle the boring stuff, so I paid our bills, managed our investments, coordinated with our accountant, filed our taxes. I had signing authority on his business accounts because he'd added me years ago when he was too swamped to deal with paperwork. He'd literally given me the keys to his kingdom and then forgot I had them. 3 weeks after that humiliating dinner party, Trevor started coming home smelling like perfume. Different perfume. Not mine. His phone was always face down. He was showering as soon as he got home. Classic signs, right? But I didn't confront him. I watched, I waited, and then, one Thursday evening, he came home and casually announced, "I'm having a colleague over tomorrow to discuss a deal. Might be good if you take the kids out for a bit." I said okay. I made dinner the next night. I answered the door when she arrived. Her name was Brittany. She was young, maybe 26, from his office. Trevor introduced her with barely concealed familiarity, and the way they looked at each other told me everything. He'd brought his mistress into our home, into the house where our children slept upstairs. The disrespect was so complete, so absolute, that I felt this strange calm wash over me. I offered them drinks. I smiled. I excused myself, saying I needed to check on the kids. I went upstairs, tucked Caleb and Shayla into bed, kissed their foreheads, and then I sat down at my laptop and started making a list. I listed every account we had, every investment, every property. The house we'd bought 3 years ago, I'd put down the entire down payment from my investments. The vacation rental property in Savannah. I'd found it, negotiated it, and managed it. Trevor's 401k that I'd set up and maximised. The joint savings account that I funded and managed. His business credit cards that I reconciled every month. I knew every password, every login, every single detail of our financial life because I'd been running it for years while he was too busy being a big shot. That weekend, while Trevor took Brittany on what he told me was a business trip, I made 3 phone calls. First, I called Ms. Green, my old mentor from college, who'd become a family law attorney. Second, I called my cousin Andre, a financial advisor who specialized in asset protection. Third, I called my best friend Tanisha, who'd survived a brutal divorce 5 years earlier and came out on top. I spent the next 2 weeks quietly, methodically documenting everything. I took screenshots of bank statements. I downloaded financial records. I found Trevor's messages with Brittany on the iPad he shared with the kids, because of course he was that careless. Photos, hotel receipts, everything. And the whole time, I smiled. I cooked dinner. I was the perfect, useless wife. On a Monday morning, while Trevor was in his office feeling important, he got served with divorce papers. Ms. Green had filed everything over the weekend. And here's where it gets good. The same morning he was served, several other things happened simultaneously. I legally withdrew my exact share from our joint accounts. 50%, not a penny more. All documented and legitimate. I moved it to a protected account. I changed passwords on every account I managed, which was all of them. I suspended the joint credit cards to prevent any revenge spending. I filed for child support. I documented his adultery with a formal filing, and I sent a detailed letter to our accountant and financial advisor informing them that I was no longer managing Trevor's personal finances and that he'd need to handle his own affairs moving forward. Trevor came home that evening like a hurricane. He burst through the door screaming, "What the hell did you do?" What did you do? I was sitting on the couch, calm, with my laptop. I looked up at him and said, "I stopped being useless." His face went through about 5 different emotions. Confusion, anger, panic, realization. "You can't just take our money," he yelled. I smiled. "I didn't take our money, Trevor. I took my money. Everything I removed was legally mine. You'll find all the documentation with your attorney." That's when the panic really set in. See, Trevor hadn't realized how much I actually did. He thought I just sat around eating bonbons or whatever fantasy he'd created, but I paid every single bill. I scheduled every appointment. I managed the housekeeper, the lawn service, the handyman. I coordinated with his assistant on his calendar. I booked his business trips. I bought gifts for his mother, his colleagues, his clients, gifts he took credit for. I filed our taxes. I negotiated with our insurance companies. I handled every single administrative detail of our life. And now, suddenly, he was on his own. The next morning, he had a business trip to Seattle, except he didn't have the flight information because I'd always received those confirmations and forwarded them to him. He missed the flight. He had a major client dinner that week. He forgot about it entirely because I'd always reminded him. His dry cleaning that he needed for a presentation. He'd never even known where the dry cleaner was located. Within 1 week, Trevor's perfectly organized life became absolute chaos, and I got to watch from a distance while I settled into a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with my kids. Through mutual friends and my own quiet network, I heard everything. He'd shown up to an important meeting completely unprepared because he couldn't find the files. Files I'd always organized for him. He'd forgotten his mother's birthday, and she'd called me crying, which honestly broke my heart because I loved that woman. She apologized for her son. That meant everything. And Brittany. Oh, Brittany discovered very quickly that dating Trevor wasn't glamorous business dinners and hotel rooms anymore. It was a stressed-out man who couldn't find his own tax documents. She was gone within 3 weeks. The divorce proceedings revealed everything in stark financial terms. Trevor's attorney tried to argue that I wasn't entitled to much since I didn't work. Ms. Green absolutely demolished that argument. She showed the court that I'd put down the entire down payment on our house from my premarital funds, which meant I had significant equity beyond the community property split. She demonstrated that I'd managed all marital investments, showing contribution beyond just financial. She presented evidence that I'd been working as a consultant, generating income while raising children. And she documented his adultery, which in our state mattered. The judge ordered substantial child support based on Trevor's income. I got half of his 401k, community property accumulated during marriage. I got my share of the house equity, which was considerable since I'd put down $70,000 from my own savings. The investment properties we owned? I'd managed them completely, collecting rent, handling repairs, doing the taxes. I got one, he got the other, but mine was the better performer because I'd chosen it. And my separate accounts, my investments, my consulting business? Completely untouchable. They were mine before marriage and kept separate throughout. Trevor tried to reach out. At first, the calls were angry. Voicemails screaming about how I'd blindsided him, how I was vindictive, how I was destroying him. I didn't respond. Then the tone shifted. Apologetic texts. I was under so much stress. I didn't mean those things, I was wrong. Still didn't respond. Then came the desperate phase. I need your help with the tax deadline. I can't find the insurance papers for the house. The accountant is asking for documents I don't have. That's when I responded just once. I texted back, hire an assistant. I'm sure you can afford it. Oh, wait. 6 months after I left, I heard through the grapevine that Trevor's company had let him go. His performance had tanked. He was missing quotas, showing up unprepared to meetings, losing clients. Turns out, a lot of his success had been built on the foundation of a stable home life and a partner who handled everything so he could focus solely on work. Without that infrastructure, without me, he couldn't maintain the same level of performance. He'd moved to a small 1-bedroom apartment. He was struggling to make child support payments. The man who'd called me useless was falling apart without me. Meanwhile, I'd restarted my marketing consultancy full-time, working from home, my own hours, my own clients. Caleb was in kindergarten, Shayla was in preschool 3 days a week, and I was building something that was entirely mine. My investments continued growing. I was present for my kids in a way I'd never been able to be when I was trying to manage Trevor's ego and our household. We had movie nights. We baked cookies. We went to the park. And I was making good money, on my terms, doing work I loved. I ran into Trevor once about 8 months after the divorce was finalized. He was at the grocery store looking exhausted, and he saw me with the kids. He walked over, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Loss, definitely. He said, "You look good. Happy." I said, "I am." He nodded slowly and said, "I messed up. I know that now. I didn't realize what I had." I looked at him and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just nothing. I said, "You didn't lose me, Trevor. You threw me away. There's a difference. Here's what I learned through all of this. It was never about revenge. It was about knowing my worth. Those 5 years I spent at home weren't wasted. I was raising children, which is valuable. I was managing a household, which is running a complex operation. I was building my own financial security quietly. I was learning, growing, protecting myself. Just because labor is unpaid doesn't mean it's worthless. Women who manage homes are managing what would be million-dollar operations if someone else did it. We're accountants, schedulers, project managers, chefs, cleaners, nurses, teachers, and therapists. All at once. All without a salary. But here's my advice to every woman listening. Never give up your financial independence completely. Keep your own account, even if it's small. Keep your skills current, even if it's just a side project. Keep your own identity separate from being someone's wife or someone's mother. Because the moment you make yourself completely dependent on someone else, you give them the power to make you feel small. And no one deserves that power over you. Not your husband, not your partner, not anyone. I'm not saying don't trust your partner or don't build a life together. I'm saying protect yourself. Know where every dollar is. Have access to every account. Keep copies of every document. Maintain your own credit. Build your own safety net. Because life is unpredictable and people change, and you need to be able to stand on your own feet no matter what happens. Trevor called me useless while I was literally holding his entire world together, and when I let go, that world collapsed. Not because I was vindictive, but because it was never his world alone. It was ours, and I'd been the foundation. He just never bothered to notice until the foundation walked away. If this story reminded you that you're not just anything, you're not just a wife, just a mom, just a homemaker, then subscribe to this channel. Share this video with any woman who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me, what's one way you've protected yourself or claimed your power? And remember, the moment someone calls you useless, that's when you know they've been using you. But here's the beautiful part, you can stop letting them. See you in the next story.